Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed. Today's topic, unfortunately, is one which is very sad, and that is the plight of the Kashmiris in Indian occupied Kashmir. And we'll also be talking about the plight of the Palestinians. But first, when we talk about the situation for the Kashmiris and the Palestinians, there are so many parallels that can be drawn between the miseries of both these people. And it's no coincidence that the miseries both began in 1947, to be precise, and it is still ongoing. We're hoping that at some point the world will wake up to the miseries and the situation that is afflicting the people of Kashmir and Palestine. So yes, that is going to be our topic for discussion. We will begin with the plight of the Kashmiris, and of course, since the plight of the Palestinians is no less, we'll be continuing our discussion regarding that as well. So let's begin the conversation. I'd like to introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me today for this discussion, first of all, we have Dr. Ghulam Mujadid with us, and joining Dr. Ghulam Mujadid, we have Dr. Amina Mehmood. Thank you very much for being here, sir. Sir, let's begin. First of all, is it a coincidence, sir? 1947-48 is the time when the miseries for both the Palestinians and the Kashmiris began. And if we just see what happened in the last couple of days, the initial number of people that were killed were also exactly the same. But before that, sir, let's talk about the issue of the Kashmiris. Now, at the moment, what we are witnessing is a security clampdown. There's a strike that has been sponsored by the freedom fighters in Kashmir. And 16 combatants and 4 civilians have been killed in the process, sir. The international community is pretty much silent on the issue. Where do we begin, sir?
Yes, I think the aspect that international community is silent on the issue and what is actually happening in Kashmir, they are interconnected. But first, let's look at the dynamics inside Kashmir. What is the Indian Armed Forces' latest policy? That anybody that is seen hindering, so-called hindering, the operations or the movement of the Indian security forces is directly taken to be the part and parcel of the so-called militants. So they become a target. And that is why we see that the deaths of the innocent people, or the ones who demonstrate peacefully against what they think is right, is increasing. Over 6,000 people, the small kids of all ages, including small little girls, they have been blinded from one eye or both eyes over the last 2 years, especially after Wani's execution. So it is continuation of the same, that they think that there are so-called militants that are hiding in some houses, and they carry out the operations, and they then, under that garb of operation, once the demonstrations occur in protest to that, well, these were not the terrorists or something. They did not require an operation. So in order to show their solidarity for their sons of the soils, who are just merely putting up their demand in whatever way that they like to put in, so the cycle sets in. There is a death of the innocent people, and pellet gunning, it goes on. So this is the dynamics that is there. What we need to do it at the international level, I think we need to raise the ante.
Okay, so we've just been joined by Masood Khan Saab, the president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Let's talk to him about the latest situation. Thank you for joining us, Masood Khan Saab. Sir, what's the latest situation? And you've been also having very serious consultations and meetings throughout the day. If you'd like to share with us what is our modus operandi going to be in dealing with this latest violence that is engulfing the valley, sir?
Well, our reaction is one of outrage and condemnation. We strongly condemn Indian occupation forces' brutalities yesterday, which have caused 17 deaths and more than 200 casualties. This is a frequent pattern. This is not a one-off thing because a lot of attention is being paid to what has happened yesterday, but this continues to happen. These are all judicial claims which violate laws of war, Geneva Conventions and international law. They are deliberately targeting non-combatant civilians and who should never be targeted under the international humanitarian law. So I think it is international community's responsibility to respond to the situation. I believe that their silence, this eerie silence of the international community, is tantamount to acquiescence in the crimes against humanity being committed by the Indian occupation forces. Indian atrocities must come to an end. India, unfortunately, regrettably, wants to resolve the issue of Jammu and Kashmir by state terrorism. This is not the way forward. But I believe that India would never be able to crush Kashmiri's movement for freedom and right to self-determination. Kashmiris, let me tell you, I mean, this is our sense, will never capitulate or be intimidated into subjugation or submission. We will get our freedom. This is our right. The Kashmiris have vowed that they would continue their political and diplomatic campaign to get rid of Indian occupation under all circumstances.
Sir, why is the United Nations silent on this particular issue? We've heard some statements coming out from the United Nations urging for an independent and transparent investigation into what happened in Gaza, but we have not heard something similar when it comes to the case of Kashmir.
The two reasons. One is that the United Nations is not performing its role in regard to Kashmir. Kashmir is on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council, and UNMOGIP, this United Nations military observer group in India and Pakistan that continues to report constantly on the deteriorating human rights situation in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Indian-occupied Kashmir, and yet the Security Council fails to take cognizance of the situation. It's a tragedy of our times because United Nations Security Council is responsible for maintenance of international peace and security. So I think that this is criminal negligence on the part of the United Nations. The second reason this is not happening is because India has influence with major powers like the permanent members, United States, United Kingdom, France, others, and therefore they do not take this matter to the United Nations Security Council. And I think that the least the United Nations could have done was a statement by Mr. Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the United Nations. I'll also say that we have not been going vigorously to the United Nations, and that's why the Kashmiri's voice is not heard there. I think we should lobby more actively, more proactively to get the attention of the United Nations.
And sir, is there any other forum besides the United Nations where we can take the issue of Kashmir, maybe the International Court of Justice, or any other forum, sir, in your opinion, that can take a look at this issue and maybe deal with it? Because we've not seen any action by the United Nations in the last 70 years.
It's the United Nations Security Council, the United Nations Secretary General, the General Assembly, the Human Rights Council, the entire body of the United Nations, I mean the different bodies that deal with human rights or peace and security issues. In addition to that, you have the European Parliament. You also have world's most influential parliaments, for instance, the United States Congress and parliaments of Western countries. We can also take this issue to our diaspora community and also to the Asia-Pacific region. Our diaspora community is quite strong, and we have to make special efforts, particularly in the media, the new media, the traditional media, also the social media, which is quite effective these days. So, but we have to take a strategic decision. We have to go back to the international community. Our bilateral channel or bilateral engagement with India has been unproductive. It has produced no results whatsoever. It has emboldened India to commit crimes against humanity in the occupied Kashmir with absolute impunity. It's not the international community with full conviction that freedom is the right of the Kashmiri people. They must get their right to self-determination, and the international community must get involved in crafting a dispensation which would respect the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
And sir, finally, what would you like to say about the support that the people of Kashmir have not been getting or been getting from the Muslim Ummah, all the strong Muslim countries of the world? Have they adequately supported the Kashmir issue and the Kashmiri struggle?
This is a misperception and misconception. In fact, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation year after year has been passing resolutions to condemn India's atrocities in the Indian-occupied Kashmir, and they have also been adopting resolutions upholding the right to self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They also have appointed a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir. They also have an OIC contact group on Jammu and Kashmir, which meets regularly. And whenever there are summits or ministerial conferences, their communiques or final documents do include references to the human rights situation in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Indian-occupied Kashmir. And they do call for an end to the atrocities in that territory. So India wants to give this impression that Muslims are not supporting Pakistan on Kashmir, and that Pakistan is isolated, and the Kashmiris are isolated. Kashmiris are not isolated. India is trying to fool the entire international community and mislead them, but let me tell you that there is strong sentiment of support for the Kashmiris in the Muslim community, in the Muslim Ummah. And you must have heard statements which have been given by Turkey's President Erdogan. When he came to Pakistan, he addressed the parliament, and while addressing the parliament, he raised the issue of Jammu and Kashmir with conviction and courage. And when he traveled to Delhi, he raised this issue with Narendra Modi, demanding that the issue of Jammu and Kashmir should be resolved in accordance with the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Thank you very much, Masood Khan Saab, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, coming back into the studio, Dr. Amna, one of the things that came out from this conversation with Dr. Saab as well was the fact that the international media has been mostly silent on the issue of the Kashmiris' plight. That we had a lot of coverage being given to the Palestinian situation, but unfortunately none whatsoever on the Kashmiris. Why do you think that is the case, besides the obvious, of course?
I think the same benign neglect from the international media that is there. They are covering more Indian point of view rather than Muslim point of view. And as Masood Khan was just mentioning, that we have been very unsuccessful to consolidate the organizations which are Muslim based. And you know, all these Muslim countries, especially the Gulf countries, they have very close relationship with India. And if they could have use their leverage from the platform of OIC, then we don't need to go anywhere on for rescue to UN or other regional organizations. Secondly, I think that international media, that they have strong imprints of Indian ideology, and as I have been mentioning in a number of other programs, that India very rightly they have planned, that they have inculcated their people in international media. They are trained in the West, they have got jobs there, and now there is no need of investment on international media because they are Indians and they are working for the Indian interest. And by the way, Indian diaspora all over the world, that they are very organized, they are very patriot, and they are spending lot of money, giving lot of money not only to Indian government, but they spend on lobbying on the local assemblies, local decision makers, and they the outcome is that they bring laws and policies which are in the Indian national interest. So at the right now, we are seeing that hardly any European channel is showing atrocities committed in Indian Held Kashmir. And human rights violation, such a large scale, is ignored simply by having such a few statements on some of the channels for just 1 or 2 minutes. Even BBC having coverage all over the world, they have ignored this human rights violations, human rights violations. The reason is again that they have invested in the long run.
Geopolitics and economics are the real factors here.
This is only the media policy, Indian media policy, that they have taken very right direction. Maybe 10 years back, they have planted number of Indian students who were studying media and communication. They were given scholarships to Western institutions. They trained there, and then they automatically were having their space in jobs there in international media. Now they are portraying whatever they want in Indian national interest, and we cannot do anything right now except we have to plan for the next 5 years. I don't see that in the foreseeable future this Kashmir issue is going to be resolved. So right now we take this dimension that we have to adopt a counter strategy, that instead of stressing or asserting something from here, we should also send some people, invest on our students and train them in the Western system, and then let them counter Indian influence and Western criticism from within.
Absolutely, that's a very good suggestion. But the Prime Minister has also called a special cabinet meeting to discuss the Kashmir situation that is ongoing, and the Chief of Army Staff has also given a statement that is coming out from the ISPR. Indian atrocities in occupied Kashmir can never suppress a just indigenous political struggle for self-determination. Brutalities by the Indian security forces against innocent Kashmiris in Indian occupied Kashmir along the line of control and working boundary targeting civilians are highly condemnable. That is what the Chief of Army Staff has said, according to his tweet by the ISPR. Coming back into the studio, sir, let's also talk about the situation on the streets of Kashmir. We have the situation of a curfew that has been imposed in Srinagar. These tactics have been used for decades now, sir, but that have failed to suppress the will of the Kashmiri people. When do you think, or why is it that the Indian government does not learn their lessons and engage with the Kashmiris for a peaceful resolution to the issues, sir?
You see, Indians have a design. They are doing everything by design. Dr. Sabah just pointed out that how is their media infringement into the foreign capitals, as indeed in their think tanks, the ones that control the intellectual currents, discourse, narrative and conversation around the globe, and especially in the important capitals, how it has been infiltrated by the Indian lobby. Most of them are their nationals. They have become the nationals of United States of America, the British citizens, etc., etc., and they safeguard their interest. We have Pakistanis, but they are very far and few in these capitals, and we have not consciously, made a long-term plan so that we could, present our point of view or a counter view, because presenting whatever is happening in Kashmir is a big enough argument itself to these. And I believe that in the world capitals, well, there may be geopolitics and politics and all that, but everybody remains a human being. And everybody, espouses the values of freedom, struggle. You read about the core values of United States of America, France, anywhere else. You will find this freedom, equality, fraternity over there. So whenever or wherever it is being infringed, I think the world conscious is automatically, it comes into play, provided there is somebody to tell that, okay, this is, please go and see it for yourself, and this is what is happening over there. Now, Indians, I said, have a plan, and they have plan, they have moves and counter moves against anything that the other, or let's say Pakistan or the ones who are with the Kashmiris or Kashmiris themselves would do. And they are following exactly the same strategy. You are talking of the similarity between Palestinian and Kashmiris. They are following the exact same pattern and strategy, must I say, that Israel has so far followed in case of Palestinians. Right, there is a conflict where the other world, the whole of the world is a party on behalf of the Palestinians, and yet for the last 69, 70 years, Israel is doing what it is changing the perennial historical realities on ground. The land that is never Israel, that was never to be Israel, it was occupied, conquered in the war, is now the realities are being changed, and the world, so, it is quite. So the same strategy, it is very, because the technology has increased, the styles of oppression and subjugation have also become sophisticated, and it has become very easy for these oppressors and tyrants to continue with their oppression almost scot-free. Unless we just don't talk, but we do what is required to be done. Anybody can raise the issue in the United Nations Security Council, whatever is happening. If Pakistan is a party to the conflict, then we can go and raise the issue. Who stops us? President of Azad Kashmir is the political president of an area that is supposedly an integral part of where the atrocities are being committed. I think we could move the world in this political position of being a president. Other than the solidarity that is being shown today by the civilians in the Pakistani or Azad Kashmir, I think we could do much more on the political level, because there is many things that can be done. About the, of course, Muslim world, there is a lot of fraternity for the Kashmiris, lot of feelings, and they are based on just the principles, not because they want to favor Pakistan or Kashmiris or something. It is based on the principles, and whatever is happening, it is not Pakistani propaganda, by the way. And if somebody is not covering, doesn't matter. Makes people come and we have our side. We can bring people to them to the media.
In fact, sir, we have been bringing people. There were recently military observers from the United Nations who were directly fired upon by the Indian security forces. And if that has not been able to move the United Nations to at least condemn what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir, then where do we really stand, sir? That begs, it's a very serious question, that when we have blatant disregard for the United Nations norms, how can we even go further? What options does Pakistan or the Kashmiris have left to them, sir?
Well, again, I would say that we will, as a country, as a party to the Kashmir conflict, we will have to achieve our purpose under the given circumstances that have been ably pointed out by you and by ma'am. These realities are not going to change. If the world is not favorable to us, is not listening to Kashmiris, well, we better find some device, some methods to make the world listen to them. Because these things are going, so that means that if Indians occupy 80%, 90% of the world opinion, so that means Pakistan or Kashmiris stand no chance? No, sir. Once we are in the adverse situations, the strategy demands that you overcome or neutralize these things with the passive. You also have your friends, you also have your mind to think, and you also play up the counter strategies. So we'll have to do that. Merely narration that they are, world is with them, they are a very big power. Yes, they are. But then should we leave our stance or something, or should we just cry hoarse that nobody's looking at, nobody's supporting us? No, I think we should sit down seriously and chalk down policies and strategies in various fields of the elements of power that can make the things,
Well, that's a very good suggestion, sir, and I hope that the powers that be will be looking into that. Dr. Amina, would you like to share something at this point? Or yeah. Because let's talk about the statement that has come out from the Prime Minister's office. Again, a tweet. Prime Minister has condemned the Indian brutality in Kashmir that resulted in the martyrdom of 20 Kashmiris. This act of barbarism in Indian-occupied Kashmir is a violation of human rights. That statement came out from the Foreign Office. We also have a statement by Khwaja Muhammad Asif, our Foreign Minister. 20 martyred in South Kashmir, Shopian, Islamabad districts of occupied Kashmir. A bloodbath today. Indian occupation forces martyred 20 Kashmiris, 300 injured and destroyed over 5 houses, and still counting. Worst day of state terrorism in Kashmir Valley for a very long time. So having, seeing the situation as it is being narrated by no less than the Foreign Office and the Prime Minister's Office, why are we not getting the kind of response and support that we need to get from those who at least support the Kashmiri issue? We've not really had statements coming out from any of our neighbors either, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Iran, whether it's China. We still are seeing that there's a criminal silence that is being maintained by even the regional players when it comes to the Kashmir issue.
That is very important, and we should think, as Dr. was pointing out, that Kashmir is itself having a different status. They are not part of Pakistan, even Pakistani Kashmir, Azad Kashmir, which it is called. That is not part of Pakistan, and they are having independent government, independent parliament, and independent presidency. So, and it's very fortunate for Kashmiris that they are having Masood Khan in office, a very seasoned diplomat. So he can play very well that Kashmir radio should be separate, and they should have their broadcast in international languages to display all that, to let people know that what is happening in Indian held Kashmir, and how Indian Pakistani occupied Kashmir, or what they call it, that Pakistani administer Kashmir, they are having good position as far as human rights is concerned, as far as democracy is concerned, as far as human liberties are concerned.
Ma'am,
so
please hold the thought, because we've been joined by Murtaza Shibli. He's a Kashmiri journalist reporting from Srinagar. Let's get the latest information from him. Thank you very much, Murtaza, for joining PTV World. Please tell us what the situation on the ground is right now. What are you witnessing? And do you see any end in sight to the atrocities that are being committed by the Indians?
Well, the situation is very sad, as you mentioned earlier, that 20 people have been killed, and any death, whether civilians or armed militants or anybody, it's funereal atmosphere here, with most of the shops closed down, very deserted look, and people very sad, as usual. But this is not something unique, because this is happening for quite some time. I've seen it for such a long time. Our forefathers have seen it for such a long time. So it's kind of a diurnal experience, unfortunately. But you were earlier mentioning that, is there any end in sight? I don't think so, because for several reasons. One is that, India is a growing power. It has the confidence and support of America and the European countries, because it has been groomed as parallel to the emerging China. So it's the same situation what was during early 80s, when Americans were supporting Pakistan, and Pakistan was confident enough to take several initiatives in different areas in the region. So at the moment it is the Indian turn. But frankly speaking, I don't see anything happening in any future, in near future, for several reasons. One is that there is conflict fatigue. There's conflict in so many places around the world at the moment, from Yemen to Syria to Iraq to South Sudan to Central African Republic, and so many other places. In Palestine, for example, there was a massive carnage for the last couple of days being played out without any condemnation from any reasonable condemnation from any part of the world. So it is probably just up to Pakistan to do anything, but I'm not sure, frankly speaking, because I live on both sides of the divide. I spend half of my time usually in Srinagar and half of time in Pakistan because of my own peculiar family situation, where Indian government consistently denies my family visa to India because my wife is Pakistani. But the problem here is Pakistan's room for maneuver is very little, if at all any. It can perhaps, apart from issuing customary condemnation statements, it could have perhaps sensitized the world about the real situation in Kashmir. But unfortunately, I know it very well what plays out on your side of the region. We don't see any really any effective methodology, mechanism, or any effort to this extent. So, for example, we have Kashmir Committee in Pakistani Parliament. That has been headed by somebody who doesn't know anything about Kashmir. And I know about how they spend their budget as well. So even within the country, Pakistani parliamentarians don't know much about Kashmir, frankly speaking. And also it is very important to understand the mechanisms of the world, how world power and its institutions work, for example, the United Nations. If the world powers are not interested, they won't do much. United Nations hasn't even gotten right to self-determination for Western Sahara, for example. For so many years it's been lingering on. So we need some regional mechanisms, perhaps, say, for example, with friendly countries like China, Turkey, for example, roped in to develop some sort of regional mechanism to deal with the issue, and perhaps one of them could have been CPEC. And there was a hope that CPEC could bring India together in an economic embrace so that there would be some sort of softening of attitudes and approaches towards one another. But unfortunately, the U.S. has openly opposed CPEC, so India is also opposing it, which is the biggest tragedy for the region. So, to be honest, I don't see any hope at the moment.
Murtaza, if you could also share with us if you witnessed any activity by the Mehbooba Mufti headed state government in Kashmir. Have they tried to play a role in trying to calm the situation down, or trying to have a conversation with the Indian government about the way they are using force in the valley at the moment?
To be honest, it would be churlish and overly optimistic to put any sort of burden on Mehbooba Mufti, frankly speaking. I mean, she's not the chief minister of people. She's been installed there and everybody knows it. The opposition national conference, which is also part of the game, openly says that. Farooq Abdullah has said on several occasions that she was installed by the Indian security agencies to keep a lid on Kashmir issues. So even if I know it for a fact from inside sources that even her own ministers and bureaucrats don't take her seriously because she is not seen as the center of power. It situates in New Delhi. It is posited in New Delhi, whatever they decide. And there have been enough empirical evidence that when she said something, the Indian authorities said totally opposite to that, diametrically opposite things. And whatever the Indian central government wanted, that happened rather than Mehbooba Mufti's word given any weightage at all, apart from perhaps the civic issues like a civic body would do, like constructing roads or hospitals or inaugurating some bridges, etc. I don't see her role beyond that, frankly speaking.
All right, thank you very much, Murtaza, for sharing your views with PTV World. Sir, you heard the conversation from Mr. Murtaza Shibli. He is in Kashmiri, a Kashmiri journalist, telling us what the situation on the ground is like. A very heart-wrenching situation that he has drawn for us, the picture. But one of the questions that came to my mind when he was speaking, sir, was about maybe getting the Russians involved, because the Russians have an interest in the region. The way the global politics is changing these days, the Russians, the Chinese, they all have a stake, sir. They are in our region. So they can be leveraged to play a larger role when it comes to Kashmir. Why haven't we done that in all these years?
So, I mean, you point out to a very important area, the diplomacy, use of diplomatic code by Pakistan to serve the interests that we have in front of us. This is a very, very important area. And why we haven't been able to do it is as sad as the narration by Murtaza, the journalist. I think nobody stopped us. I mean, China is there for us. Russia has shown positive overtures to Pakistan for a long time. It is us who took this much of time to reach the condition that we have reached so far. If we had started earlier on, at least 10 years back, once President Putin was showing positivity towards Pakistan, and we should have we could have brought Russia on board. Even now we can go and engage the world capital, especially the countries, the powers in the region, that well, this region is unstable. There are two nuclear countries, that is India and Pakistan, and they have very basic dispute, and the dispute is over the fate of millions of human beings. And there are chances, that we could get in case one is frustrated, and then chance for miscalculation and risk taking might increase. It just might increase. So I think we have many arguments to make with the regional powers. Look, come here. We just want you to kindly help as a neutral person, not as a friend of Pakistan, but this is a region that we need to manage. I think we could have many accounts and arguments to plead with our friends in the international community, and they could have definitely helped us much more than what is the situation at the present time.
Well, then that begs the question, sir, that maybe the international community is not interested in solving the Kashmir issue. That makes them complicit in the issue for prolonging it for so long and not really addressing it when it should have been addressed. What does that say about the international community? Dr. Amina, would you like to answer that? Because Mr. Imran Khan has also demanded from the United Nations to act against India. I wonder if they're listening.
I think there is some fault on our side too. As sir pointed out, that we are not working in that dimension, that to build up a regional alliance with our neighboring powers which are having stakes in this region. America certainly they are having different stakes, and they have planned differently. Their focus is not coming out of their Cold War mindset. They are working on the same dimension, that India would be their best partner to contain China and reasserting Russia. But Pakistan is having different stakes. Russia and China are showing different aptitude towards regional stakes, and they wanted to have these areas stronger. And Russia, as they are reclaiming its position as the successor of Soviet Union, so they want to have this area, this region as their courtyard, and they want to expel US from here and watch their interests. And certainly their interests are not only political, those interests are basically the economic interests, and that's why China is joining them. So I think that it is right time for Pakistan to assert and to make alliances with their neighboring countries, Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey certainly, and China also. You see that in the previous few months, China has shown number of signs of deviation from Pakistani foreign policy, and you see that the rumors that Pakistan is going on terrorist financing countries in June 2018, that is because China and Turkey have withdrawn their support and their guarantees which they have given for Pakistan. Now we should ask Foreign Office and our government that why it is so. Because we are having lot of stakes with China, but China is having more stakes than with Pakistan. Then why they have withdrawn their this guarantee? So Turkey and China both, if they are going from Pakistani camp, they are going away and they are deviating from Pakistan's national interest, then what is our foreign offices doing there? What to talk about US and India? We are losing our seasoned and trustful friends. It means that our foreign office is not working well. So we have to think and we have to plan strategies for next 10 years. Secondly, the point which number of people are raising, that if India would be the part of CPAC, then we can use our leverage for Kashmir. It is not so. If we would use that leverage, it would be at the beginning when they are entering in that CPAC. And you see that when India is showing certain inclination to enter into CPAC, then China's Prime Minister gives another statement in Delhi that is against Pakistan. It means that we have to use our leverage on the major part of CPAC we should use this leverage with China, negotiate with China first, that if India is entering CPAC, they are more than welcome, but they have to resolve this issue, and we have make them understand, because every nation acts for their national interest. So, we have to make China understand that this is the national interest of China, and it is in very much for the survival of CPAC that this region should be at peace. Otherwise, it is a nuclear flashpoint, and this Kashmir is maybe the first reason for that. So, if China would understand that, if Russia would understand that, only then they would come for the rescue of Kashmir one, and then they would bargain with India that all the economic stakes, all the economic benefits would be transferred to you only when you are going to resolve this issue. I
That's
think
an excellent point, ma'am. Excellent suggestion that you've come up with, but we hope that that will be put into practice. Dr. Saab, what is your opinion, sir, on this matter?
I would just like to add some points.
Please,
actually, at the FATF conference that was held in Paris about a month back or something, China and Turkey, they were two countries along with one another that fully supported Pakistan. Actually, they exercised their kind of a veto once there was a suggestion to put Pakistan into the list. And that is what the point is. If there are three countries who say no, a country is not to be put on that list, procedure demands that it must not happen. And that is what Pakistan's stance is, that it is against the procedure. There are countries who say that no, Pakistan is a clean country, or it need not to be put in the grey list or something. Turkey, China, and the Gulf states and all that, and they said so. FATF is not a failure of our foreign policy as it is a failure of our internal circumstances. I think probably the issue is not that other countries want Pakistan because Pakistan has done something internationally. No. What their claim is, or what the FATF or what the organization demands from Pakistan is that, well, you are to do these things internally. And we believe that those things have not been done out of neglect or whatever, taking it easy or something. The FATF and grey list, its factors do not lie outside Pakistan, they lie within Pakistan. And our friends, whatever they could help, they have done it. They haven't gone anywhere else. So
but
this
sir,
was just,
again,
just
the thing is that the FATF issue has nothing to do with Kashmir, sir.
It doesn't have anything to do with Kashmir, but it just demands that we should not, the international politics and geoeconomics or whatever, it is a very complex situation. And we have friendships that are enduring, and they are there for us. We must be thankful to them. FATF and Kashmir, if somebody is not, apparently supporting Pakistan, but we should have complete knowledge and say, well, I think Pakistan needs to convince them, argue with them, and get them on board. It is not that.
What about those countries that are engaging in state-sponsored terrorism, as isn't the case of India doing in Kashmir? Shouldn't India be put on the FATF itself, sir?
No, sir.
That makes sense.
That is what I'm trying to say, that FATF putting on the grey list is what India is doing internally, and there should be a case that is to be taken up by Pakistan or other countries that India has done this in its country. It is not following the standard laid out by the FATF organization or something, and the same process will be followed. Any country can do that.
Sir, well, we're almost out of time, but we must also mention the situation with the Palestinians, sir. Again, the parallels are more than just a coincidence. It seems that there is a unfortunate, sinister plan or strategy to keep the world embroiled in violence, which is completely senseless, sir. So ordinary citizens all over the world cannot make sense of the situation that is being suffered by the Palestinians and the Kashmiris. So having seen the way the world is reacting to both these issues, it's quite obvious, sir, that nobody seems to be serious about resolving it. In fact, the interest seems to be in keeping it burning, keeping it lingering on. So those are really difficult odds to rally against or to work against. How does one begin to even work towards that sort of a solution, sir?
One can only lament one can only speak of tragic feelings of tragedy that resides within one person once he looks at the Palestinian situation, looks at the Israel itself. The Holocaust, supposedly 6 million human beings, just they were exterminated or something, according to whatever the accounts that we are told or something. And then about 2,000 years before that, there was a situation that God liberated a community that was enslaved by another community. The whole community was enslaved, and they just God created circumstances that community was liberated from that extreme indignation and discrimination. On the same day, and the ones who tell us about the Holocaust, exactly the same things are being done by the so-called victims of Holocaust against the Palestinian people, and they are doing exactly the same with the Palestinians that their forefathers suffered, and God, made them free under Moses.
So what you're saying, in effect, sir, that we must leave it up to God to deal with the
No,
situation.
That's
all we can do.
It is the same day, this on 30th of March was a Passover day.
Yes, sir.
Which commemorates
The day Moses liberated the...
God liberated, gave them the liberty. So we are not, of course, we are not saying that we should wait for some Moses, but I think the Palestinians should pray that there should be some Moses.
Well, let's hope, sir.
That should convince the nation of the Moses, or the Ummah of the Moses, to do what actually needs to be done for Palestine.
So we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Couldn't have said it better myself. And this is what we are seeing, that those who claim to be oppressed earlier are now the greatest oppressors of humankind today. And what is the difference between Hitler and Netanyahu today? We'll leave it on that note. It's goodbye.